Keep an eye out for the golden star that will appear on screen during the video. If you spot it, comment the time frame you saw it in. Get it right, and you'll get a shout out in our next video. Happy hunting! Dr. Elena Carter adjusted her holographic glasses as she stepped into the excavation site beneath the bustling city of Neometropolis. The contrast between the advanced, digital world above and the ancient ruins below never ceased to amaze her. This site, buried deep beneath layers of history, had been her obsession for years. Today, she felt closer than ever to unearthing its secrets. Elena's team was already hard at work, their tools humming softly in the dimly lit cavern. The air was thick with anticipation and dust. She approached the central chamber, where a faint, pulsing light emanated from a newly uncovered structure. As she drew nearer, her heartbeat quickened. There it was, partially buried in the earth, a large, intricately carved stone tablet. Elena knelt beside the artifact, tracing the ancient symbols with her gloved fingers. "This is it," she murmured to herself. "The breakthrough we've been waiting for." The symbols were unlike any she had seen before, a complex fusion of hieroglyphs and unknown runes. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could this tablet hold the key to the legends of time manipulation that had always been dismissed as myth? "Dr. Carter, we found something else," called out Jacob, one of her lead archaeologists. He was standing near a smaller, more delicate structure that seemed to be a pedestal of some sort. She walked over, her curiosity piqued. On the pedestal lay a small, shimmering device, clearly of a different origin than the stone tablet. It appeared to be made of a material not native to Earth, its surface smooth and reflective, with symbols that matched those on the tablet. "Careful," she instructed, as Jacob reached out to touch it. "We don't know what it is yet." Elena took a deep breath and picked up the device. Instantly, it reacted to her touch, glowing brighter and emitting a low hum. The air around them seemed to distort, and for a brief moment, Elena felt as if she was being pulled through time itself. Visions of different eras flashed before her eyes: ancient cities, medieval battles, futuristic landscapes. It was overwhelming, and she had to steady herself to stay focused. "We need to analyze this immediately," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. She placed the device in a protective case and carefully lifted the stone tablet, signaling her team to follow her back to the research lab. As they made their way through the narrow tunnels leading to the surface, Elena couldn't help but think about the potential implications of her discovery. If this artifact truly had the power to manipulate time, it could change everything. Her mind buzzed with excitement and a tinge of fear. The responsibility of such knowledge was immense. Back in the lab, Elena and her team worked tirelessly to decipher the tablet and analyze the device. Hours turned into days as they pored over the symbols and ran countless simulations. The deeper they delved, the more they realized that this was no ordinary find. One late evening, as the team took a rare break, Elena sat alone with the tablet. She traced the symbols again, her mind wandering to the possibilities and dangers that lay ahead. "What have we uncovered?" she thought. "Is the world ready for this?" Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, sharp noise. The device had started to emit a series of beeps and vibrations. Elena jumped up, her heart pounding. She approached it cautiously, her eyes widening as the device projected a holographic map of the world, with points of light marking various locations. "Jacob! Everyone! Come here, quickly!" she called out. The team gathered around, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of the hologram. This looks like a map of temporal anomalies," Jacob said, his voice filled with awe and apprehension. Elena nodded, her mind racing. "If this is accurate, then time itself is unstable. We need to investigate these locations and understand the full extent of this." As she spoke, the device's hum grew louder, and the lights on the map began to pulse. Without warning, a bright flash filled the room, and the world around them seemed to shatter and reform in an instant. When the light faded, Elena found herself standing in the same room, but everything felt different. The air was thicker, the sounds muted. She looked around and saw figures materializing out of thin air, men and women in clothing from different eras, all appearing as confused and disoriented as she felt. Her team stared in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. One of the figures, a tall man in medieval armor, stepped forward. "Where am I?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the lab. Elena took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "You're in the year 2120, she said, her voice firm despite the chaos. "And I believe we've just opened a temporal rift." The realization hit her like a tidal wave. The artifact, the device, the visions, they were all connected. And now, time travelers from different eras were converging in her lab. The fate of the world, and possibly all of time, was suddenly in her hands. The lab was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the soft hum of the mysterious device. Figures from different eras stood bewildered, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. Elena knew she had to take control of the situation before panic set in. "Everyone, please stay calm," she called out, trying to project authority despite her own racing thoughts. "I know this is overwhelming, but we need to work together to understand what's happening." The medieval knight who had spoken earlier stepped forward again. His armor clanked with each movement, a stark contrast to the sleek, modern equipment surrounding him. "My name is Sir Richard of York," he said, his voice resonating with a commanding presence. "I was on the battlefield just moments ago. How is it that I am now here?" Elena took a deep breath. "Sir Richard, it appears that a temporal rift has brought you and others from different times to this moment. My team and I are trying to figure out why and how to resolve it." A woman in Victorian-era clothing, her corset tightly laced, approached with cautious steps. "I am Margaret Whitfield, a writer from London," she introduced herself. "This is all quite impossible, isn't it?" Elena gave a reassuring smile, though she felt far from certain. "It might seem that way, Margaret, but I assure you, we'll find a way to make sense of it." More figures began to gather, each representing a different point in history. A Roman centurion, a 1920s flapper, an astronaut from the early space age, and many others filled the room. Each brought their own unique aura, creating a surreal mosaic of human history. Jacob, her trusted colleague, approached Elena. "We need to get these people settled and gather as much information as we can about their respective times and how they ended up here." Elena nodded, appreciating his level-headedness. "Yes, let's set up a temporary camp in the main hall. We need to catalog their backgrounds and any events that might have triggered their arrival. We need to understand the scope of this rift." As they organized the travelers, Elena noticed the contrasting behaviors and attitudes of the different eras. Sir Richard stood stoically, clearly used to commanding respect and authority. Margaret Whitfield, on the other hand, observed her surroundings with a mixture of fascination and apprehension, her writer's curiosity piqued by the strange new world around her. The Roman centurion, Marcus, spoke in a commanding yet bewildered tone. "In my time, we heard legends of gods playing with time, but I never believed it could be true. What kind of sorcery is this?" Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. "It's not sorcery, Marcus. It's a scientific phenomenon, though one we barely understand. We need your cooperation to figure it out." As the initial shock wore off, the travelers began to share their stories. Sir Richard recounted his last memory of a fierce battle. Margaret spoke of her study, where she had been writing a novel about time travel. Marcus described a moment of prayer to the gods before finding himself in this strange new place. Each story added a piece to the puzzle, but also deepened the mystery. Elena's mind buzzed with questions. What could have caused the rift to bring together such diverse individuals? Could it be a deliberate act, or was it a random consequence of their excavation? She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. These people were depending on her to find answers and, ultimately, a way back to their own times. As they worked, A young boy dressed in Renaissance clothing timidly approached Elena. "My name is Luca," he said, his voice trembling. "I was in my village, watching the stars with my father. Now I'm here. Will I ever see him again?" Elena knelt down to his level, her heart aching for the child. "We will do everything we can to get you back to your father, Luca. I promise." Jacob's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Elena, we've got a problem. The device is acting up again." She turned to see the device pulsating with an intense light, the holographic map flickering. "Everyone, stand back," she ordered, her voice urgent. The travelers stepped away, their eyes fixed on the device. Elena approached the machine cautiously, her mind racing. "What are you trying to tell us?" she wondered aloud. The device emitted a series of rapid beeps, and the map displayed new points of light, indicating more temporal anomalies. "We need to stabilize this before it gets worse," Jacob said, his tone grim. Elena nodded. "Agreed. But first, we need to understand the connection between these points and our new arrivals. There has to be a pattern." As they examined the new data, the travelers gathered around, their expressions a mix of hope and fear. Each of them represented a different piece of history, a different life disrupted by the rift. Elena felt a surge of determination. She had to find a way to fix this, not just for her sake, but for all of them. Hours passed as they worked tirelessly. Conversations flowed between the travelers, their initial wariness giving way to a shared sense of purpose. Sir Richard and Marcus discussed strategies and battles, finding common ground in their warrior backgrounds. Margaret and Luca talked about their families and the times they came from, offering each other comfort. Elena observed these interactions with a sense of awe. Despite the vast differences between them, these individuals were finding ways to connect, to understand each other. It gave her hope that they could overcome the challenges ahead. Finally, Jacob broke the silence. "Elena, I think I've found something. These anomalies seem to correspond with major historical events that involve significant shifts in power or technology. It's almost as if the rift is drawn to moments of change." Elena's eyes widened. "So, if we can identify and understand these events, we might be able to predict and control the rift's behavior." Jacob nodded. "It's a start. We need to gather more data and compare notes with our travelers. Their first-hand accounts might hold the key." Elena turned to the group, her voice filled with newfound resolve. "Everyone, we have a plan. We need to document your histories in detail, focusing on any major events that might have triggered your arrival here. Together, we can find a way to stabilize the rift and get you back to your times." As the travelers nodded in agreement, Elena felt a surge of determination. They were not just witnesses to history. They were now part of a new, unprecedented chapter. The convergence of their timelines was not just a challenge, but an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to forge a path forward. As the night deepened, the lab became a hive of activity, filled with the hum of technology and the murmur of voices from across the ages. Elena knew they had a long road ahead, but for the first time since the rift had opened, she felt a glimmer of hope. Together, they would find a way to set things right. The following morning, the lab was a flurry of activity. Time travelers and scientists worked side by side, piecing together the fragments of history that had converged in this improbable moment. Dr. Elena Carter barely had time to think as she moved between groups, offering guidance and absorbing their stories. The holographic map continued to pulse, each light representing a new puzzle piece they needed to solve. In the midst of this controlled chaos, the main door to the lab slid open with a hiss, revealing a tall, imposing figure. He stepped into the room with an air of confidence, his dark eyes sweeping across the gathered individuals. He was dressed in a sleek, futuristic uniform, the likes of which even Elena hadn't seen before. "My name is Victor Solov," he announced, his voice smooth and authoritative. "I come from the early 22nd century. I've come to help you close the temporal rift." Elena's eyes narrowed as she approached him. How did you get here? Did the rift bring you too? Victor nodded. Yes, I was conducting experiments on temporal mechanics when I was pulled through. It seems fate has brought us together for a reason. Elena studied him for a moment, sensing a hidden agenda but unable to place it. Welcome, Victor. Any help is appreciated. We're trying to understand the connection between these temporal anomalies and major historical events. Victor's gaze flicked to the holographic map, his expression unreadable. I see. Let's hope my knowledge can expedite our efforts. With that, Victor integrated himself seamlessly into the group, offering insights that were both brilliant and timely. He quickly gained the trust of many, his charisma and expertise winning over even the most skeptical. However, Elena remained cautious. She assigned Jacob to keep an eye on Victor, suspecting that his arrival might be more than mere coincidence. Later that day, as the team worked tirelessly, an alarm blared through the lab. The holographic map flared brightly, highlighting a new anomaly. This one was different. It was massive, and its epicenter was dangerously close. We have to investigate this, Elena said urgently. It's too close to ignore. Elena, Victor, and a small team of travelers and scientists quickly geared up and headed towards the anomaly. They traversed the city's underground tunnels, the air thick with tension and the distant rumble of activity above them. As they approached the anomaly site, the ground began to tremble, and the walls seemed to warp and shift. Elena turned to Victor. This is bigger than anything we've seen. Any ideas on what we're dealing with? Victor's eyes gleamed. It's likely a major temporal displacement. We must be prepared for anything. The team emerged into a vast underground chamber, illuminated by the pulsing light of the anomaly. In the center stood a swirling vortex of energy, its edges crackling with raw power. Around it, ghostly figures flickered in and out of existence, snapshots of people from different eras, trapped in a loop. We need to stabilize this before it causes irreversible damage, Elena shouted over the roar of the vortex. Victor nodded and began to issue commands. Set up the temporal dampeners. We need to isolate the core. The team sprang into action, deploying advanced equipment designed to contain temporal energy. Elena worked alongside them, her mind racing to keep up with the rapidly unfolding events. Suddenly, a loud crack split the air, and the vortex surged violently. Elena was thrown back, her vision blurring as she hit the ground. Through the haze, she saw Victor standing firm, a device in his hand aimed at the vortex. His expression was one of fierce determination, but something about his stance made Elena's heart race with suspicion. Everyone, fall back, Victor commanded. I can handle this. Elena struggled to her feet, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. No! We need to work together! But it was too late. Victor activated the device, and the vortex's energy twisted towards it, drawn like a magnet. For a moment, it seemed to work. The swirling chaos began to stabilize. Then, without warning, Victor redirected the energy, sending a shockwave through the chamber. The ground split open, and Elena watched in horror as time itself fractured around them. Through the rift, she glimpsed scenes from countless eras, colliding and merging in a cacophony of sights and sounds. The team members were scattered, struggling to hold their ground against the onslaught of temporal forces. Victor's laughter echoed through the chaos. You fools! Did you think you could control time without consequences? Elena's blood ran cold. Victor, what are you doing? He turned to face her, his eyes burning with a mad brilliance. I'm seizing the power of the rift. With this, I can reshape history to my will. No more chaos, no more unpredictability. A new order under my control. Elena's mind raced. She had to stop him, but how? She glanced around, her eyes falling on a damaged temporal dampener. If she could just recalibrate it. With a surge of determination, she dove towards the device, ignoring the chaos around her. She worked frantically, her fingers flying over the controls. "Jacob! Get the others to safety!" she shouted, hoping her voice carried over the din. Victor approached, his expression turning to one of suspicion. "What are you doing, Elena?" She didn't look up. "Fixing your mess." Before he could react, she activated the dampener, directing its energy towards the vortex. The device hummed and pulsed, drawing the chaotic energy away from Victor's control and stabilizing the rift. Victor screamed in rage as his plans unraveled. "No! This isn't how it's supposed to be!" Elena gritted her teeth. "This ends now, Victor!" With a final surge, the dampener absorbed the remaining energy, and the vortex collapsed in on itself, sealing the rift. The chamber fell silent, the only sound the heavy breathing of the team members as they recovered from the ordeal. Victor lay on the ground, defeated but not unconscious. Elena approached him, her eyes blazing. "You're coming back with us. You have a lot to answer for." As they made their way back to the lab, Elena's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Victor's betrayal had shaken her, but it had also solidified her resolve. They had a long road ahead, but now more than ever, she was determined to restore the balance of time and prevent further disasters. The path to stabilizing the temporal anomalies was fraught with danger and deception, but with the truth revealed, Elena knew they had a fighting chance. Together, they would confront the challenges ahead and forge a future where history's mistakes would not be repeated. The journey back to the lab was tense and silent, each step echoing the gravity of their recent encounter. Elena walked at the front, her mind whirring with strategies and contingencies. Victor, now bound and closely guarded, was an ever-present reminder of the treachery they faced. The air in the underground tunnels felt heavier, charged with the weight of their collective mission. Upon returning to the lab, Elena immediately called a meeting. The room was filled with a diverse array of faces, each etched with concern and determination. Time travelers from different eras and her dedicated team of scientists gathered, united by a shared purpose. "We can't afford any more surprises," Elena began, her voice steady but firm. "Victor's actions have shown us that we must be vigilant and unified. We need to understand these anomalies better and prepare for whatever comes next." Sir Richard of York stepped forward, his presence commanding respect. "What do you propose, Dr. Carter? How can we assist in this endeavor?" Elena glanced at the holographic map, now a visual representation of their greatest challenge. "We need to form specialized teams, combining the knowledge and skills from different eras. Each team will investigate the anomalies and gather data. The more we understand, the better our chances of closing the rift for good." Margaret Whitfield, the Victorian writer, nodded thoughtfully. "I can document our findings and keep a detailed record. It might help us identify patterns or connections we might otherwise miss." The Roman centurion, Marcus, added, "And I can lead a team to secure the anomaly sites. We need to ensure they remain stable while we study them." Elena felt a surge of hope as the travelers volunteered their skills. Despite their differences, they were coming together, each bringing a unique perspective and expertise. As teams were formed and roles assigned, Elena pulled Jacob aside. "We need to keep a close eye on Victor. He's too dangerous to leave unattended." Jacob nodded. "I'll set up a secure area for him and make sure he's monitored at all times." With the teams organized, they set out to investigate the new anomalies. Elena joined a team that included Sir Richard, Margaret, and a few scientists. Their first destination was a site near the city center, where a minor anomaly had been detected. The journey through the bustling streets of Neometropolis was surreal. Citizens went about their daily lives, unaware of the temporal disruptions beneath their feet. Elena couldn't help but marvel at the stark contrast between the advanced technology of her time and the historical figures walking beside her. As they approached the anomaly site, a low hum filled the air. The team halted, scanning the area for any signs of temporal disturbances. Elena's eyes were drawn to a faint, shimmering distortion in the air, barely visible but undeniably present. Here, she said, pointing to the anomaly. We need to set up our equipment and start gathering data. The team worked quickly, setting up temporal scanners and stabilizers. Margaret observed closely, her notebook in hand, documenting every detail. Elena, look at this, Sir Richard called out, his voice tinged with urgency. He pointed to a scanner that displayed a fluctuating energy reading. Elena examined the data, her mind racing. This anomaly is more unstable than we thought. If it breaches, it could cause significant damage. Margaret stepped closer, her eyes scanning the readings. Could there be a pattern to these fluctuations? Something we can use to predict and control them? Elena nodded. It's possible. We need more data to be sure. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and the shimmering distortion began to expand. It's destabilizing, Elena shouted. Everyone, fall back! The team retreated to a safe distance as the anomaly pulsed with increasing intensity. Elena's mind raced, searching for a solution. She had seen a similar pattern before, during Victor's attempt to seize control of the rift. We need to synchronize the stabilizers, she instructed. If we can match the anomaly's frequency, we might be able to contain it. With Sir Richard's help, they adjusted the stabilizers, aligning them with the anomaly's fluctuating energy. The team worked in tense silence, the hum of the equipment the only sound. As the stabilizers powered up, the anomaly began to shrink, its energy drawn into the containment field. The air crackled with tension as the team held their breath, waiting for the results. Finally, the anomaly stabilized, its once violent energy now contained within the field. The team let out a collective sigh of relief. We did it, Sir Richard said, a rare smile crossing his face. Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. This is just the beginning. We need to apply what we've learned here to the other anomalies. Margaret approached, her notebook filled with detailed notes. I believe this data will be invaluable. We can use it to develop a more comprehensive strategy. As they made their way back to the lab, Elena felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced their first real test and emerged victorious. But the road ahead was long, and Victor's presence remained a constant threat. Back at the lab, they shared their findings with the other teams. The data was analyzed, and a clearer picture of the anomalies began to emerge. Patterns were identified, and strategies were refined. Elena knew they had to stay vigilant. The temporal rift was a formidable foe, and Victor's machinations added an unpredictable element to their mission. But with each step forward, they grew stronger and more unified. As night fell, the lab buzzed with activity and determination. Elena took a moment to reflect, her thoughts turning to the travelers who had become her allies. Their courage and resilience gave her hope. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their quest to restore the balance of time and prevent history from unraveling. The dawn brought with it a sense of urgency and determination. The lab was a hive of activity as teams prepared for their respective missions. Elena's team, buoyed by their success the previous day, was now tasked with tackling a more significant anomaly located at the outskirts of Neometropolis. This one promised to be a tougher challenge, but they were ready. Gear up, everyone, Elena instructed, her voice steady but filled with purpose. We've got a big day ahead. As they moved out, Elena couldn't help but think about the stakes. Each anomaly they closed brought them one step closer to stabilizing the temporal rift, but the dangers were escalating. The closer they got to the heart of the problem, the more volatile the anomalies became. The team included Sir Richard, ever the steadfast warrior, Margaret with her keen observational skills, and several of Elena's best scientists. The journey to the site was swift, their hover transports slicing through the early morning air. The city was waking up, oblivious to the turmoil beneath its surface. As they arrived, the anomaly was already visible, a swirling mass of energy, pulsating with a rhythm that seemed almost sentient. The air crackled with its power, a tangible reminder of the chaos lurking just out of sight. "Spread out and set up the equipment," Elena ordered. "We need to get this under control before it expands." The team sprang into action, their movements precise and practiced. Temporal scanners were deployed, stabilizers calibrated. Margaret documented everything meticulously, her pen flying across the pages of her notebook. "Elena, we have a problem," called out one of the scientists. "The energy readings are off the charts. It's more unstable than we anticipated." Elena's mind raced. "We need to adjust the frequency of the stabilizers. Sir Richard, Margaret, help them recalibrate." As they worked, the anomaly began to grow, its energy lashing out unpredictably. The ground shook, and the air was filled with a low, menacing hum. Elena felt the weight of their mission pressing down on her. They were running out of time. Suddenly, a violent surge of energy erupted from the anomaly, knocking several team members to the ground. Sir Richard sprang to his feet, his eyes scanning the area for threats. "We need to fall back and regroup," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Elena nodded, rallying the team. "Everyone pull back. We need a new strategy." As they retreated to a safe distance, Elena's mind worked furiously. The anomaly was more powerful than anything they had faced before. They needed a new approach, and they needed it fast. "Think, Elena, think," she muttered to herself, her eyes locked on the swirling mass of energy. They needed to disrupt the anomaly's core, but how? Margaret stepped forward, her face set in determination. "I noticed something in the patterns. There are brief moments of calm in the chaos, like a heartbeat. Maybe we can use that to our advantage." Elena's eyes widened. "You're right. If we can synchronize our stabilizers to those moments of calm, we might be able to contain it." Sir Richard nodded. "I'll coordinate with the team. We need to be precise." They moved quickly, setting up a new array of stabilizers, each one calibrated to the rhythm Margaret had identified. The air was thick with tension as they prepared for another attempt. "Ready?" Elena asked, her eyes scanning the faces of her team. Each one nodded, their resolve unshaken. "Activate the stabilizers on my mark," she instructed. 3, 2, 1, now!" The stabilizers powered up, their energy beams converging on the anomaly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the swirling chaos began to stabilize, its energy drawn into the containment field. The air crackled with electricity, the ground trembling beneath their feet. "Hold steady," Elena urged, her eyes fixed on the anomaly. The tension was palpable as the stabilizers did their work, the anomaly's energy gradually subsiding. Finally, with a final pulse, the anomaly collapsed in on itself, its energy dissipating into the containment field. A collective sigh of relief swept through the team. They had done it. "Good work, everyone," Elena said, her voice filled with pride. "This is a major step forward." Sir Richard sheathed his sword, a rare smile crossing his face. "We make a good team, Dr. Carter." Margaret nodded, her notebook filled with observations. "This data will be invaluable. We can use it to refine our strategies for the other anomalies." As they made their way back to the lab, the sense of triumph was tempered by the knowledge that their mission was far from over. Each victory brought them closer to their goal, but the path ahead remained fraught with danger. Back at the lab, they shared their findings with the other teams. The data was analyzed, and new strategies were developed. Each success built on the last, their efforts becoming more coordinated and effective. Elena knew they were making progress, but she also knew that Victor was still a threat. He was under constant surveillance, but his cunning and resourcefulness meant they could never let their guard down. As night fell, the lab buzzed with activity. Teams prepared for their next missions, their resolve unshaken by the challenges they had faced. Elena took a moment to reflect, her thoughts turning to the travelers who had become her allies. Their courage and resilience gave her hope. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their quest to restore the balance of time and prevent history from unraveling. As dawn broke once more, the lab buzzed with renewed vigor. The data from the previous day's mission had given them valuable insights, but the anomalies were becoming increasingly unpredictable. Elena knew they had to act swiftly and decisively. Elena was finalizing plans for the day when Jacob approached, his face etched with concern. "We have a problem," he said quietly. "Victor's been asking a lot of questions. Too many. I'm worried he's planning something." Elena's eyes narrowed. "We'll keep an even closer watch on him. But for now, we need to stay focused. Today's anomaly is our priority." The new anomaly was located in an abandoned industrial area on the city's outskirts. It was a bleak and desolate place, a stark contrast to the bustling city center. The team, including Sir Richard, Margaret, and a contingent of scientists, moved quickly, their hover transports slicing through the air with silent efficiency. As they arrived, the anomaly loomed ahead, a churning vortex of energy, crackling with unstable power. Elena's heart raced. This one felt different, more aggressive. She could sense the urgency in every flicker of the vortex. "Set up the equipment," Elena ordered, her voice steady. "We need to contain this quickly." The team sprang into action, their movements precise and coordinated. Temporal scanners hummed to life, capturing data, while stabilizers were positioned around the anomaly's perimeter. "Elena, we're detecting unusual fluctuations," a scientist reported. "It's like the anomaly is reacting to our presence." Elena's mind raced. "We need to be careful. Any sudden moves could destabilize it further." As they worked, a low rumble echoed through the air. The ground beneath them trembled, and the vortex pulsed with an ominous glow. Elena knew they were running out of time. "Adjust the stabilizers," she instructed. "We need to synchronize with the anomaly's energy pattern." Suddenly, a shout rang out from behind her. "Elena, look out!" Elena turned just in time to see a wave of energy surge from the vortex, heading straight for her. She dove to the ground, narrowly avoiding the blast. The energy wave struck one of the stabilizers, sending it crashing to the ground in a shower of sparks. "Is everyone okay?" Elena called out, scrambling to her feet. Sir Richard helped her up, his eyes scanning the chaos. "We're fine, but we need to act fast. The anomaly is becoming more volatile." Margaret approached, her face set with determination. "We need to find a way to disrupt its core. It's the only way to stabilize it." Elena nodded. "You're right. But we need to get close enough to do it." As they devised a new plan, Victor appeared at the edge of the site, flanked by guards. He watched the scene with a keen interest, his eyes glittering with a mix of curiosity and something more sinister. "Elena," he called out, his voice carrying over the din. "Perhaps I can be of assistance." Elena's jaw tightened. "We've got this under control, Victor." Victor smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Very well. But remember, time waits for no one." Ignoring him, Elena turned back to her team. "We need to create a diversion. Sir Richard, can you draw its attention while we get close?" Sir Richard nodded, drawing his sword. "Consider it done." With a battle cry, he charged towards the vortex, his sword gleaming in the eerie light. The anomaly reacted, its energy surging towards him. Sir Richard's movements were swift and precise, his years of training evident in every step. "Now!" Elena shouted, leading the scientists towards the vortex's core. The air crackled with tension as they approached, the anomaly's energy swirling around them. Elena's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay focused. They had one chance to get this right. "Activate the disruptor," she ordered, positioning the device near the core. A scientist fumbled with the controls, his hands shaking. "It's ready, Dr. Carter." Elena took a deep breath. "Do it." The disruptor powered up, emitting a high-pitched whine, The anomaly shuddered, its energy fluctuating wildly. For a moment, it seemed like it might collapse in on itself. "Hold steady," Elena urged, her eyes fixed on the vortex. The disruptor's energy beams converged on the core, stabilizing the anomaly's chaotic energy. The air was thick with tension, every second stretching into an eternity. Finally, with a final pulse, the anomaly's energy dissipated, leaving behind a calm, empty space. The team let out a collective sigh of relief. "We did it," Margaret said, her voice trembling with emotion. Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. "Good work, everyone. Let's get back to the lab." As they packed up their equipment, Elena noticed Victor watching them closely. His expression was inscrutable, but she couldn't shake the sense that he was plotting something. Back at the lab, they shared their findings and refined their strategies. Each victory brought them closer to their goal, but Elena knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. Victor's presence loomed over them like a dark cloud, his intentions a constant source of concern. But for now, they had to stay focused on their mission. As night fell, the lab buzzed with activity and determination. Elena took a moment to reflect, her thoughts turning to the travelers who had become her allies. Their courage and resilience gave her hope. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their quest to restore the balance of time and prevent history from unraveling. The following morning, the lab was alive with activity. Teams were preparing for their next missions, and Elena was deep in conversation with Margaret and Sir Richard, discussing the data they had gathered. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of hope and tension. "Today's anomaly is particularly tricky," Elena said, pointing to the holographic map. "It's located in the heart of the financial district. We need to be precise and quick." Margaret nodded, her notebook ready. "I'll document everything as usual. We can't afford any mistakes." Sir Richard, ever the stalwart protector, gripped his sword. "I'll ensure we have a clear path." As they prepared to leave, Victor approached, his demeanor calm but his eyes betraying a hidden intensity. "I hear today's anomaly is a significant one," he remarked. "Perhaps I could offer my assistance." Elena's instincts flared. "Thank you, Victor, but we have it under control." He smiled, a cold and calculating expression. "Very well. Just remember, time is of the essence." Ignoring him, Elena rallied her team and set out. The hover transport hummed as it sped towards the financial district. The towering skyscrapers loomed overhead, a testament to humanity's progress. But beneath the surface, chaos threatened to unravel everything. As they arrived, the anomaly was already visible, a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The streets around it were eerily deserted, the normally bustling area now a ghost town. "Set up the equipment," Elena ordered. "We need to contain this quickly." The team moved with practiced efficiency, positioning the stabilizers and scanners around the vortex. The ground trembled, and the air was thick with anticipation. "Elena, the readings are off the charts," a scientist reported. "This one's more unstable than we expected." Elena's heart raced. "We need to adjust the frequency of the stabilizers." "Margaret, keep recording." "Sir Richard, be ready." As they worked, the anomaly began to grow, its energy lashing out unpredictably. Elena fought to maintain her composure. They had to succeed. Suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the area, sending debris flying. Elena was thrown to the ground, her ears ringing from the blast. Through the haze, she saw Victor standing near the equipment, a triumphant look on his face. "Victor, what have you done?" she shouted, scrambling to her feet. He laughed, the sound cold and devoid of humor. "Did you really think you could control the power of the rift? I've simply accelerated the process." Panic surged through Elena. "We need to stop him. He's destabilizing the anomaly on purpose." Sir Richard charged towards Victor, his sword drawn. But before he could reach him, Victor activated a device on his wrist, and a barrier of energy sprang up, blocking his path. "Not so fast," Victor sneered. "I have plans for this energy, plans that you won't interfere with." Elena's mind raced. "We need to find a way to disrupt his barrier and stabilize the anomaly." Margaret ran to Elena's side. "What do we do?" Elena looked at the equipment, searching for a solution. "We need to overload his device. If we can create a feedback loop, it might disrupt the barrier." As they worked, the anomaly grew more violent, its energy threatening to consume everything. Sir Richard continued to strike at the barrier, his determination unwavering. "Almost there," Elena muttered, her hands flying over the controls. "Just a little more." Finally, with a desperate surge of effort, they activated the feedback loop. The equipment hummed, and Victor's barrier flickered and then collapsed. "Now, Richard!" Elena shouted. Sir Richard lunged forward, his sword slicing through the air. Victor tried to activate his device again, but it was too late. Richard's blade struck true, and Victor fell, his device sparking and smoking. The anomaly, now free from Victor's interference, pulsed dangerously. Elena knew they had only moments to act. "Activate the stabilizers!" she yelled. The team sprang into action, their movements frantic but precise. The stabilizers powered up, their energy beams converging on the anomaly. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the swirling chaos began to stabilize. "Hold steady," Elena urged, her eyes fixed on the vortex. The ground trembled, the air thick with tension. The stabilizers hummed, their energy beams holding the anomaly in check. Finally, with a final pulse, the anomaly's energy dissipated, leaving behind a calm, empty space. The team let out a collective sigh of relief. They had done it. Margaret approached, her notebook filled with observations. "This data will be invaluable. We can use it to refine our strategies for the other anomalies." Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. "Good work, everyone. Let's get back to the lab." As they packed up their equipment, Elena noticed Victor lying on the ground, his expression one of bitter defeat. She approached him, her voice steady. "You've lost, Victor. It's over." He glared at her, his eyes filled with hatred. "This is far from over, Elena. The rift's power is beyond your control." Ignoring his words, Elena turned away. They had a mission to complete, and they couldn't let Victor's machinations derail their efforts. Back at the lab, they shared their findings and refined their strategies. Each victory brought them closer to their goal, but Elena knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. As night fell, the lab buzzed with activity and determination. Elena took a moment to reflect, her thoughts turning to the travelers who had become her allies. Their courage and resilience gave her hope. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their quest to restore the balance of time and prevent history from unraveling. Morning came swiftly, bringing with it an air of anticipation. The lab was a whirlwind of activity, as teams readied themselves for what could be their most critical mission yet. The data from the previous day's success had revealed an alarming pattern. The anomalies were converging, indicating a central point of origin that could be the heart of the temporal rift. Elena gathered her key team members, including Sir Richard, Margaret, and a select group of scientists. "The epicenter of the anomalies is in the old city ruins," she said, pointing to the holographic map. "If we can stabilize it, we might be able to close the rift for good." Margaret jotted down notes, her expression serious. "I'll document everything. This might be our only chance." Sir Richard tightened his grip on his sword. "I'll lead the way. We must be prepared for anything." As they prepared to leave, Jacob rushed over, his face pale. "Elena, Victor has escaped. He must have had help from the inside." Elena's heart pounded. "We need to move now. He'll be heading for the ruins to stop us." The hover transport sped through the city, carrying them towards the ruins that lay on the outskirts. The landscape was a stark contrast to the modern metropolis, a reminder of a time long past, now a battlefield for their final confrontation. As they arrived, the anomaly at the ruins was already visible. A massive vortex of energy swirled, distorting everything around it. The air crackled with raw power, and the ground beneath them trembled. "Set up the equipment," Elena commanded. "We have to act fast." The team moved quickly, positioning the stabilizers and scanners around the vortex. The anomaly pulsed violently, sending shockwaves through the ruins. Elena felt the urgency in every fiber of her being. They had to succeed. "Elena, the energy readings are off the scale," a scientist reported. "This is the most unstable one yet." Elena nodded, her mind racing. "We need to synchronize the stabilizers perfectly. Margaret, keep documenting. Sir Richard, stay alert." As they worked, a loud explosion erupted nearby. Victor appeared, flanked by several armed mercenaries. He looked at Elena with a twisted smile. "You're too late, Elena. This power belongs to me." Elena's eyes blazed with determination. "We won't let you destroy everything." Victor laughed, his voice cold. "You still don't understand. This rift is beyond your control. But I will harness its power." "Stop him!" Elena shouted. Sir Richard charged forward, his sword drawn. The mercenaries opened fire, but Richard's movements were swift and precise. He deflected their shots with his blade, advancing towards Victor with relentless determination. Elena and her team continued to set up the stabilizers, the ground shaking beneath them. Margaret documented every moment, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. "We're almost there," a scientist called out. "Just a few more adjustments." Suddenly, Victor activated a device on his wrist, sending a surge of energy towards the stabilizers. The equipment sparked and sputtered, threatening to fail. "Hold them off!" Elena yelled. "We need more time!" Sir Richard fought valiantly, his sword a blur of motion as he engaged Victor's mercenaries. Margaret and the scientists worked frantically to repair the damaged stabilizers. With a final, desperate push, Elena activated the main stabilizer. The device hummed to life, its energy beam converging with the others to focus on the heart of the vortex. "Now!" Elena shouted. "Activate the disruptor!" The disruptor powered up, its high-pitched whine cutting through the noise of battle. The anomaly shuddered, its energy fluctuating wildly. For a moment, it seemed like it might collapse in on itself. "Hold steady," Elena urged, her eyes fixed on the vortex. The ground trembled, the air thick with tension. The stabilizers hummed, their energy beams holding the anomaly in check. Finally, with a final pulse, the anomaly's energy dissipated, leaving behind a calm, empty space. The team let out a collective sigh of relief. They had done it. Margaret approached, her notebook filled with observations. "This data will be invaluable. We can use it to refine our strategies for the other anomalies." Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. "Good work, everyone. Let's get back to the lab." As they packed up their equipment, Elena noticed Victor lying on the ground, his expression one of bitter defeat. She approached him, her voice steady. "You've lost, Victor. It's over." He glared at her, his eyes filled with hatred. "This is far from over, Elena. The rift's power is beyond your control." Ignoring his words, Elena turned away. They had a mission to complete, and they couldn't let Victor's machinations derail their efforts. Back at the lab, they shared their findings and refined their strategies. Each victory brought them closer to their goal, but Elena knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. As night fell, the lab buzzed with activity and determination. Elena took a moment to reflect, her thoughts turning to the travelers who had become her allies. Their courage and resilience gave her hope. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their quest to restore the balance of time and prevent history from unraveling. The dawn of the new day was suffused with tension as the lab prepared for the most critical mission yet. The team's recent success had uncovered a convergence of anomalies, pointing to a single origin point deep within the old city ruins. This mission was to be their final push to close the rift once and for all. Elena stood at the center of the lab, briefing her key team members, Sir Richard, Margaret, Jacob, and a select group of elite scientists. "This is our last chance," she said, her voice unwavering. "The epicenter of the anomalies is in the heart of the old city ruins. If we stabilize it, we can close the rift for good." Margaret, ever the diligent recorder, nodded as she took notes. "I'll document everything meticulously. We need a complete record." Sir Richard tightened his grip on his sword, his face set with determination. "I'll lead the way. Be prepared for anything." Just then, Jacob rushed over, his face pale. "Elena, Victor has escaped. He must have had help from the inside." Elena's heart pounded. "We need to move now. He'll try to stop us." The team boarded their hover transport, the vehicle speeding through the city towards the ruins on the outskirts. The once grand structures now lay in decay, a stark reminder of a bygone era, now the battlefield for their final confrontation. As they arrived, the scene before them was harrowing. A massive vortex of energy swirled in the center of the ruins, distorting reality with its raw power. The ground trembled under their feet, and the air crackled with energy. "Set up the equipment immediately," Elena commanded. "We have to act quickly." The team moved with precision, placing stabilizers and scanners around the vortex. The anomaly pulsed violently, sending shockwaves through the ruins. Elena felt the urgency of their task deep in her core. They had to succeed. "Elena, the energy readings are off the scale," a scientist reported, his voice strained. "This is the most unstable one yet." Elena nodded, her mind racing. "We need to synchronize the stabilizers perfectly. Margaret, keep documenting. Sir Richard, stay alert." As they worked, a loud explosion erupted nearby. Victor appeared, flanked by several armed mercenaries. His eyes glinted with malice. "You're too late, Elena. This power belongs to me." Elena's determination only hardened. "We won't let you destroy everything." Victor laughed coldly. "You still don't understand. This rift is beyond your control. But I will harness its power." "Stop him!" Elena shouted. Sir Richard charged forward, his sword drawn. The mercenaries opened fire, but Richard's movements were swift and precise. He deflected their shots with his blade, advancing relentlessly towards Victor. Elena and her team continued setting up the stabilizers, the ground shaking beneath them. Margaret documented every moment, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. "We're almost there," a scientist called out. "Just a few more adjustments." Suddenly, Victor activated a device on his wrist, sending a surge of energy towards the stabilizers. The equipment sparked and sputtered, threatening to fail. "Hold them off!" Elena yelled. "We need more time!" Sir Richard fought valiantly, his sword a blur of motion as he engaged Victor's mercenaries. Margaret and the scientists worked frantically to repair the damaged stabilizers. With a final, desperate push, Elena activated the main stabilizer. The device hummed to life, its energy beam converging with the others to focus on the heart of the vortex. "Now!" Elena shouted. "Activate the disruptor!" The disruptor powered up, its high-pitched whine cutting through the noise of battle. The anomaly shuddered, its energy fluctuating wildly. For a moment, it seemed like it might collapse in on itself. "Hold steady," Elena urged, her eyes fixed on the vortex. The ground trembled, the air thick with tension. The stabilizers hummed, their energy beams holding the anomaly in check. Finally, with a final pulse, the anomaly's energy dissipated, leaving behind a calm, empty space. The team let out a collective sigh of relief. They had done it. Margaret approached, her notebook filled with observations. This data will be invaluable. We can use it to refine our strategies for the other anomalies. Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. Good work, everyone. Let's get back to the lab. As they packed up their equipment, Elena noticed Victor lying on the ground, his expression one of bitter defeat. She approached him, her voice steady. You've lost, Victor. It's over. He glared at her, his eyes filled with hatred. This is far from over, Elena. The rift's power is beyond your control. Ignoring his words, Elena turned away. They had a mission to complete, and they couldn't let Victor's machinations derail their efforts. Back at the lab, they shared their findings and refined their strategies. Each victory brought them closer to their goal, but Elena knew they couldn't afford to let their guard down. As night fell, the lab buzzed with activity and determination. Elena took a moment to reflect, her thoughts turning to the travelers who had become her allies. Their courage and resilience gave her hope. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, united in their quest to restore the balance of time and prevent history from unraveling. The morning sun cast long shadows across the lab as Elena and her team prepared for what they hoped would be the final battle. The convergence of anomalies had brought them to this point, and the data they had gathered indicated that they were closing in on the heart of the temporal rift. Today, they would confront the source directly. Elena stood at the center of the bustling lab, her eyes scanning the faces of her key team members, Sir Richard, Margaret, Jacob, and a select group of elite scientists. This is it, she began, her voice steady and determined. The epicenter of the anomalies is deep within the old city ruins. Stabilizing it could mean closing the rift for good. Margaret nodded, her pen poised over her notebook. I'll document every detail. We need a complete record of this mission. Sir Richard, his expression one of steely resolve, tightened his grip on his sword. We must be prepared for anything. I'll lead the way. Just then, Jacob rushed over, his face pale. Elena, Victor has escaped. He must have had help from the inside. Elena's heart pounded. We need to move now. He'll try to stop us. The team boarded their hover transport, the vehicle speeding through the city towards the ruins on the outskirts. The once grand structures now lay in decay, a stark reminder of a bygone era, and the site of their final confrontation. As they arrived, the scene before them was harrowing. A massive vortex of energy swirled in the center of the ruins, distorting reality with its raw power. The ground trembled under their feet, and the air crackled with energy. Set up the equipment immediately, Elena commanded. We have to act quickly. The team moved with precision, placing stabilizers and scanners around the vortex. The anomaly pulsed violently, sending shockwaves through the ruins. Elena felt the urgency of their task deep in her core. They had to succeed. Elena, the energy readings are off the scale, a scientist reported, his voice strained. This is the most unstable one yet. Elena nodded, her mind racing. We need to synchronize the stabilizers perfectly. Margaret, keep documenting. Sir Richard, stay alert. As they worked, a loud explosion erupted nearby. Victor appeared, flanked by several armed mercenaries. His eyes glinted with malice. You're too late, Elena. This power belongs to me. Elena's determination only hardened. We won't let you destroy everything. Victor laughed coldly. You still don't understand. This rift is beyond your control. But I will harness its power. Stop him! Elena shouted. Sir Richard charged forward, his sword drawn. The mercenaries opened fire, but Richard's movements were swift and precise. He deflected their shots with his blade, advancing relentlessly towards Victor. Elena and her team continued setting up the stabilizers, the ground shaking beneath them. Margaret documented every moment, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. We're almost there, a scientist called out. Just a few more adjustments. Suddenly, Victor activated a device on his wrist, sending a surge of energy towards the stabilizers. The equipment sparked and sputtered, threatening to fail. "Hold them off!" Elena yelled. "We need more time!" Sir Richard fought valiantly, his sword a blur of motion as he engaged Victor's mercenaries. Margaret and the scientists worked frantically to repair the damaged stabilizers. With a final, desperate push, Elena activated the main stabilizer. The device hummed to life, its energy beam converging with the others to focus on the heart of the vortex. "Now!" Elena shouted. "Activate the disruptor!" The disruptor powered up, its high-pitched whine cutting through the noise of battle. The anomaly shuddered, its energy fluctuating wildly. For a moment, it seemed like it might collapse in on itself. "Hold steady," Elena urged, her eyes fixed on the vortex. The ground trembled, the air thick with tension. The stabilizers hummed, their energy beams holding the anomaly in check. Finally, with a final pulse, the anomaly's energy dissipated, leaving behind a calm, empty space. The team let out a collective sigh of relief. They had done it. Margaret approached, her notebook filled with observations. "This data will be invaluable. We can use it to refine our strategies for the other anomalies." Elena nodded, feeling a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. "Good work, everyone. Let's get back to the lab." As they packed up their equipment, Elena noticed Victor lying on the ground, his expression one of bitter defeat. She approached him, her voice steady. "You've lost, Victor. It's over." Did you spot the golden star in today's video? If you did, make sure to comment the time you saw it to be mentioned in our next video. Thank you for sharing a moment of your day with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps a lot. If you don't, well, I'll still love you. Thanks for stopping by.